Gravity Falls is one of those shows that lies a tier above its competition. Similar to past examples such as Avatar The Last Airbender, it's not necessarily that it has bad competition, far from it actually, but rather the show just really excels at everything it set out to do. Best Cartoon of the 2010s is actually a quite difficult title to hold on to looking back on it, just given the vast amount of competition it had. Looking back, 2010s was probably one of the greatest decades we've had in animation history. He had shows like a regular show where The Amazing World of Gumball that really had tight writing and just phenomenal humor. Both of these are very prime examples of just how good 2010s really was. Then there are shows like Adventure Time or Steven Universe that crafted engaging worlds with incredible stories. However, Gravity Falls remains on top, at least for me, and it's for a variety of reasons. One thing that really keeps Gravity Falls above the rest is the fact that there aren't any outright bad episodes. There's nothing like Pizza Thing from Star vs. the Force of Evil, or any Ronaldo episode from Steven Universe, or any similar dud. Heck, even Avatar The Last Airbender had a dud with The Great Divide. And that's like one of the greatest shows of all time. Every show has a dud. Except for Gravity Falls. This consistency is a large part of why Gravity Falls is looked at so fondly, even near 10 years since it ended. It's been 10 years. Oh, where does the time go? Another part that I think is the biggest factor is the fact that Gravity Falls has an astounding ending that leaves the viewers in a great mood heading out. That, of course, being its stellar 3-part conclusion, Weirdmageddon. The ending of a show can seriously affect how one sees the series as a whole. For example, I can never look at my old favorite series, Star vs. the Force of Evil, the same way again because of its ending cleaved.
Oh look, here I go again.
Yeah. I know, I've talked about cleaved a lot, like, a lot. But it's good context as to why finales are important. But, okay, I get it. You want a different example. Something that isn't cleaved. Understandable. I don't like thinking about it much either. But, if we want a different example, let's take a look at Steven Universe, as I mentioned earlier. Specifically at Change Your Mind, the end of the original run of Steven Universe. Change Your Mind is actually not a terrible episode. I don't hate it. And it's nowhere near cleaved. But, in my opinion, it kind of fails as a finale. It asks more questions than it really answers, and fails to solve the show's main problem in a meaningful way. Those are two of the most important factors in a finale, and it kind of just got them wrong. Weirdmageddon, however, acts as a strong finale thanks to its well-written characters, closure, and the solution to its problem. So sit back as I take you down on a look at one of my favorite finales ever made. One thing to get out of the way right away. If you have not seen Gravity Falls, first off, what are you doing, man? You gotta watch this show. Turn this off, go watch it right now. Okay. It really does live up to the hype, and I think you will not regret watching this show. This review will contain heavy spoilers, as I'm going to go pretty in-depth on the finale of the show, and I'm about to give a recap. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, you've been warned. Don't come crying in the comments that I spoiled it. Another thing to get out of the way is how we got here. So I want to give a decently brief and oversimplified rundown of what happened to get here. If you still remember it and don't want to skip it, then I implore you to please skip to this timestamp here. I'm going to put it on the screen in post. That's how this is going to be done. Alright, still here? Here we go. So Gravity Falls is a city in the US state of Oregon, and a hotspot for all kinds of weird shenanigans and creatures. Twins Dipper and Mabel Pines are sent here because their parents no longer wish to deal with their crap. They get to stay with their great Uncle Stan, a con man who cares primarily for money, and absolutely definitely nothing else. Over the summer, Dipper finds a journal that catalogs a lot of the weirdness that he has found, and he immediately takes to studying it vigorously and searching for the author. One creature is a triangular menace by the name of Bill Cipher. Bill is summoned by Gideon, a rich kid who's in love with Mabel, but Mabel is not in love with him. And Gideon sabotages Dipper's plan. After a lot of searching, it is revealed that the author of the book is J. Jonah Jameson. I mean Cave Johnson. I mean Stanford Pines. Whew.
You serious?
Grunkle Stan's twin brother, also named Stan because that wouldn't be confusing at all to the parents, you know. I mean, goodness gracious, what are you thinking? My parents call me by my brother's name all the time, and our names aren't even close. You think they're not going to confuse two Stans? Stanford worked with Bill in the past, but stopped him before getting pulled into a portal, which Stanley eventually pulled him back from. This gave Bill an opening, and after destroying the last object in his way, he made it back to the real world. That was a good amount, and I understand that it was a vast oversimplification of the series as a whole. I definitely did not do it the justice it deserves, but now that we are caught up, let's talk about the finale, Weirdmageddon. Weirdmageddon starts off right where the previous episodes left off, with Bill Cipher free and trapping Mabel in a weird bubble. He immediately begins to make Gravity Falls weird, or, weirder, I guess. Of course, the townsfolk aren't too pleased with being invaded, but luckily, Bill Cipher has a solution. When people are giving you trouble, just turn them into stone. It's quick, simple, and puts them out of your misery. Of course, the survivors are not quite happy about this, with most of them hiding in fear of the threat facing them. I mean, of course, not everyone is afraid. Stanford has a last-ditch plan to beat Bill in the most American way possible. By shooting him. Unfortunately, he fails. But don't worry, because Ford is golden. Literally, in this case. This leaves Dipper to fight the triangular menace alone. Or so he thought, because he actually has some help from Wendy and Seuss. But they just still need Mabel. This is the end of Part 1. Part 2 focuses on retrieving Mabel from a terrible dystopian wasteland contained within a dark prison, one thought up in the most twisted of Bill's terrible dreams. Mabelland, a bright, colorful land full of all of Mabel's dreams. These dreams are absolute nightmares, and I wish Mabelland to be destroyed. Luckily, it is, when Dipper convinces his sister to face reality. Mabel also acknowledges her selfish act, saying, "I won't stop you from going forward." I'm just throwing that out there since people claim she never learns, and here is a clear scene of her learning. Just throwing that out there. She does learn. Mabel's still a good character. I'm sick of seeing people criticize her and say that she's a bad character. She's not. Also, it is revealed that Bill cannot leave Gravity Falls due to a mysterious barrier. I'll talk more about Part 2 as we go on, but plot-wise, it kind of has the least going on. Part 3 has the gang prepare to face off against Bill head-on to rescue Ford, who knows how to beat Bill. Stanley is hesitant to risk his life again for his brother, given that, well, he feels like Ford was ungrateful, and while it was justified, Ford definitely was ungrateful. Their plan involves turning the Mystery Shack into a giant robot mecha to fight Bill and his army. Since the shack was previously lined with a magic charm protecting it from Bill's weirdness, they attack Bill's minions and use the distraction to send their best fighters into the Pyramid, Bill's castle. Here they release Ford and try to create the Zodiac. However, the stands are too cool to hold hands, causing it to fail, and causing Bill to catch them. Bill turns all but the Pines into posters and threatens to kill Dipper and Mabel if Ford doesn't make a deal with them. Of course, this does not work out the way Bill anticipates when he is tricked into entering the wrong Stan's head, leading to an unfortunate erasure.
Turn around and look at me, you one-eyed demon! You're a real wise guy, but you made one fatal mistake. You messed with my family.
You're making a mistake! I'll give it to me!
Bill is defeated, but Stan forgets who he is. That is until Stanley is shown a picture book, and forgets that he is supposed to have forgotten who he is. The series ends with Dipper and Mabel going home. Okay, with the plot summary out of the way, let's talk pacing and structure. I think that these episodes are paced beautifully. No part is too slow or too fast in any way. Part 1 moves very quickly, but it makes sense because it is trying to show how chaotic and weird this event is. and it helps to ramp up the tension as Dipper tries to find a way to survive what is happening to his town. By making the pace quick at the start, you really feel the fear and panic that Dipper is going through without his twin, and it gives you a stronger sense of the danger that they are really in. The humor is also fast-paced, aiding the episode by keeping the plot and jokes moving in tandem. Not a second is wasted, which I appreciate, because brevity can be great when it is needed. Part 2, however, slows down a good bit. But, remember how I was talking about brevity being good? Forget that, because right here, brevity is bad. This part focuses more on the personal struggle that Dipper is facing, being stuck in the nightmare that is Mabelland, unknowing if his sister even wants the real him. The pacing here is slow, and it lingers in scenes more, but that's not to say it's bad, quite the opposite. The slower pace helps the viewer breathe after the first act of the story. Part 1 was so chaotic, so this part being slow helps the viewer to kind of breathe and take in everything. It also helps to establish just how stuck Dipper really is. It gives Mabelland this sense of unease that no other location in this series really has. You feel trapped with Dipper, stuck in an area of your nightmare, one that should be a wonderful dream, but something is just off. This is shown when Dipper breaks the one rule, mentioning reality. Now, I want to talk about the court scene later, but it is the payoff to the slow pace, showing some really good dramatic weights. Part 3 is a mix between the two. Its pacing switches up as needed, going faster as the time passes. It helps to ramp up the tension as we realize just how hard of a threat Bill really is to counter. Accelerating the pacing does wonders for how this episode plays out, with Bill getting more and more desperate and dangerous as it goes on. It lures you into a false sense of security at one point, slowing down for the Zodiac, but immediately speeds up afterwards, making it feel hopeless, making it feel like Bill might win. The structure of Weirdmageddon is a bit unique for a cartoon, largely due to being given a lot more time to use on it. The near 88 minutes given really allowed them to close every story beat they wanted to close. This is a large part of why the Owl House's finale isn't as good as I think it could have been. It just simply wasn't given the time of day. The three-part structure here actually gives them a lot of time to establish Weirdmageddon, tell the story of Mabelland, and defeat Bill in a very well-placed and very satisfying way. I don't often talk about structure, because I need to get better at recognizing it, but here it really comes out to show just how much better a good structure can make a show. But what is a show without its characters? Well, not very good, that's for sure. Gravity Falls has some iconic characters in it, to be sure. But how do they fare in the finale? Well, they all evolve quite a lot in Weirdmageddon, and it's a blast to see. So let's evaluate every main character and their arc. We'll start with Dipper, the main character of the whole show. Dipper is faced with a tough challenge. He must beat Bill Cipher, a threat he has outwitted before, but now he has no uncle, no Mabel, no journals. He must find out who he is without any of them, or alternatively, find a way to get them back. I love this plotline for Dipper. His relatability and struggles to connect to a lot of people. I think everyone has had at least one moment where they felt the world was conspiring against them, that they could not get back up to face their triangular demons. But somehow, some way, you must keep moving forward and carve that path. This is exactly what Dipper does, but he has some help along the way. Thanks to Wendy, he gets Mabel back, who helps him get Ford, who helps him beat Bill. They all help, but it is Dipper's ingenuity and quick thinking that help give Ford the time he needs to really beat Bill. He gains the confidence he needs over the progression of the story, and it makes the audience really want to root for him. Dipper is such a great character, and I love his arc here. Everything about it is so good, but he's not the only character. Mabel, on the other hand, she faces a serious conundrum. She's trapped in a world full of her best dreams, where every desire she has is fulfilled to the exact degree she wants. Mabelland is constructed to be the perfect escape from reality for Mabel. She doesn't want to leave because that means facing a world where she believes she's alone. Her insecurities are brought to life in the court scene, where we see a series of bad events happen to Mabel and Dipper. They show Mabel getting her hair ruined and Dipper being left out on Valentine's Day, a prospect that, I am very familiar with. Anyway, her worst fears drive her motivation in this episode, and this extends to how far she has gone to avoid leaving. She even made a replica of Dipper, Dippy Fresh, who always helps Mabel and would never leave her. He acts as what Mabel wants because he is part of the escape. Of course, they eventually do get through to Mabel when Dipper brings up that every threat they faced, every trouble they faced it together, and they've come out on the other side just fine.
I don't know what's gonna happen in the future, but whatever it is, you don't have to fear because we'll do it together. I'm not taking Ford's apprenticeship.
Dipper even gives up on going with Ford, not because Mabel made him or coerced him, but of his own volition. All because he wants to be there for his sister. After Mabel Land, Mabel does not have much of an arc, as her story arc is complete, but she's still a helpful piece in defeating Bill. And once again, Mabel learned. Please, stop saying Mabel never learned any lessons and never changed. That is blatantly untrue, and saying so just proves that you never watched the dang show. Sorry, it's tired of seeing that argument. Stanley Pines, let's talk Stanley Pines. Stanley Pines has one of the most touching stories throughout the show, starting as a self-centered con man and going into the most loving grunkle you've ever seen. Stanley is faced with a difficult decision at the start of Weirdmageddon. Stand up and fight Bill, risking his life in the process, or, as he puts it, run like a coward. Now, that is a bit harsh, as he did rescue a bunch of survivors in the process. However, he is adamantly against fighting it back in any way, even when he knows it is the only chance to save his brother. Of course, his anger is understandable, as Ford treated Stan quite poorly after his rescue. His anger and grudge about this caused Bill to almost kill Dipper or Mabel, but he puts it aside and makes up with his brother. Stan atones for every mistake he made by making a sacrifice to save the rest of his family. His sacrifice is one of nobility, and definitely not something you can see him doing at the start, but it is the perfect payoff for every bit of character development that he has had throughout the series. Now, Ford, on the other hand, has to learn to forgive Stanley for his past mistakes, which, admittedly, is a difficult task. You see, Stan cost Ford everything due to a mistake in his past. Because of said mistake, Ford lost his opportunity to go to the college of his dreams and had to settle for Backup S'more University, which, if I remember correctly, I believe that is where Nick Foles went. But I digress. Ford also blames Stan for Bill getting released when Stan brought Ford back home. His grudge is a little interesting because he knows deep down that Bill is his own fault. He fell for his tricks that Stan would have immediately recognized. He even states this in the latter half of the episode.
Don't blame yourself. I'm the one who made a deal with Bill in the first place. I fell for all his easy flattery. You would have seen him for the scam artist he is.
He ultimately learns to forgive Stan, and they mend that relationship in a really heartfelt way. Finally, we have the primary antagonist of the entire franchise, Bill Cipher. Bill is a legendary Disney villain, a perfect mix of silly and dangerous. He's an all-knowing god that was trapped for centuries in the Nightmare Realm, just waiting for a foolish human dumb enough to help him escape. Sorry, I just really like Bill. Ford is the one who helps him in this endeavor, actually, and throughout Weirdmageddon, Bill is an absolute menace.
I've got the kids! I think I'm gonna kill one of them now, just for the heck of it! Eenie! Meanie!
He immediately takes over as the new ruler of the town, turning people to stone and wreaking havoc all over the city. He has so many great moments and is a serious threat to the cast. The best part is, you can trace every part of his takeover to a mistake by the Pines family. The portal that allowed Bill through, Ford's doing. Him knowing the twins, Dipper and Mabel and Dreamscapers and Puppet Master. His ultimate escape, you guessed it, the twins for switching backpacks. We have seen him trick the family in the past, and that was without a physical form or any sense of power. Now he has the power to back up his tricks, but he does have one fatal flaw. Insane tunnel vision. Bill has really intense tunnel vision when it comes to entering Ford's mind. I'm talking not even thinking if the con man next to Ford may have a few cons to pull. He is supposedly all-knowing but didn't realize this. This is not meant to be a criticism, by the way, and I want to make that clear, because this is a legitimate character flaw. Like, honestly, I really don't have much to criticize Bill on. He's just a near-perfect character. These are just the main characters, but the side characters do a good bit too. Zeus gets a nice little plot where he wanders the wasteland in search of survivors' help. This is awesome because it means more Zeus, and I love Zeus. He's freaking great. Don't take that the wrong way. You know what I mean. We also get some good Wendy bits with her helping Dipper, showing that she really values his friendship. And they don't even make any awkward jokes about Dipper formerly having a crush on her, or still possibly having a crush on her. It's great. They have one slight mention of it, but they never linger on it. Which I know certain other shows, I'm not going to name names, but maybe Star Wars Forces of Evil might do. Gideon even gets a little arc where he learns to treat Mabel like a person. Isn't that awesome? Almost every side character is given something to do. They all have fun interactions. Things like Zeus teaching Maguka anime and the T-Rex callback have always stuck with me. Then there is Tad Strange, who is a little scarred by the whole event. In terms of interaction, some of my favorites are Dipper convincing Gideon to let him free Mabel, Bill threatening Ford, and Dipper and Mabel in the court scene. One thing that Gravity Falls has always done well is the tight-knit style of its writing. Everything in this show is intentional, and that goes down to the core. At its core, Gravity Falls is a story about trust. At the start, Dipper is told to trust no one, a sentiment started by Ford's journal. This extends to Bill, who is a perfect villain for a trust story, due to his deceptive ways. Bill provides someone that you should never trust, and it really helps push the moral of trust in a nuanced way, unlike something like Raya and the Last Dragon, which really bungled the same exact message. But that's a story for another day. The theme of trust is deeply woven into every story, but there is no clearer example than how Ford and Stanley interact. The two do not trust each other at all, and refuse to change for a good while despite evidence that the other can be trusted now. Of course, they have reason not to trust them, due to mistakes in the past, but that's in the past. They need to move on. Like I said earlier, they nearly ruin everything because of this, and can only beat Bill when they put a little trust in each other to trick the master manipulator. The message of Weirdmageddon and Gravity Falls really is that trusting everybody is not a good way to go about your life. But neither is being paranoid and trusting no one. It is all about finding a middle ground and learning who and when to trust. It's a really nice message that I believe kids need to learn. Trust is a valuable thing and it shouldn't be taken lightly, especially in today's society. It is a great lesson for kids who use the internet. Don't trust a random guy you meet online, but don't always assume the worst. Just use some judgment. Figure it out for yourself. Play it safe, but don't assume the worst of people. Now that we got story, characters, and the main theme out of the way, let's talk dialogue. Weirdmageddon has some really charming dialogue. It successfully crosses the tightrope between being funny and over-relying on random XD humor, which is a lot harder to do with a villain like Bill, who can alter reality itself. It would have been very easy just to make every joke just, Bill did something random, isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? But they avoid that. The dialogue just in general never feels forced at any point. It all meshes well and feels really believable, even when the grown men start arguing like kids over who helped who. My favorite dialogue comes from the court scene in part 2, and it really demonstrates how good this writing crew really is at making emotional dialogue between characters even in a goofy environment. Dipper's hopeful words colliding with Mabel Land's natural pessimism towards reality make for a really engaging conflict. I love the scene where Dipper's proving to Mabel that things are better than they look, that we've gone through everything together. The dialogue spoken there is just so good, and it really works. Dipper inspires hope through their stories in the past, and it's really good. It's really, really good. I could gush over this forever, just trust me. I believe the impact of Weirdmageddon can be felt a lot when you look at the cartoon community in general. Whenever a new cartoon ends, Weirdmageddon is the bar they are compared to. It is always held up as the shining light of what a finale should be. I think it is telling how many people want a sequel or a spin-off rather than a continuation. Because this episode ended in such a nice way. Nobody wants this ending to be overwritten. They want a new series entirely. That way, this can always stand as the ending of Gravity Falls. Every Disney show lives in the shadow of Gravity Falls now, for better or for worse. It's not necessarily a fair bar to hold stuff to, but it does show just how high of regard people hold the show in. Is it, like I said, is it fair? Not exactly. This expectation has made shows like Big City Greens fall under the radar because they're not insanely plot-driven. By the way, I strongly recommend watching a few episodes of Big City Greens. That show can be pretty good at times. Okay, I'm getting off track. I don't think it would be a widely beloved show, as much as it is, if it had a finale like Cleaved. This is true for almost any show in existence. The ending will always be the second most important part of the show, right after its beginning. Shows after Gravity Falls in general tried to adopt a similar format, and a lot of them were quite successful. The two shining examples in that category for me are Amphibia and The Owl House, two of my favorite shows. They both also share some of the staff from Gravity Falls, and they both have phenomenal finales as well, especially Amphibia. I love Weirdmageddon in almost every way possible, and it is really impressive to me that an ending can be this in-depth and this neatly wrapped. I particularly love the epilogue portion, where Dipper and Mabel celebrate their birthdays. Seuss becomes the head of the shack, and the stands go out for the adventure of a lifetime. It really is a masterpiece, one that I will always treasure my time with. I watched this finale live when it first came out, and upon my modern rewatch, it's honestly even better than I remembered. The only criticism I can think of is that the way Stanley gets his memory back is a bit of a cop-out, but I mean, that's extremely nitpicky, and really not that important. I have been wanting to review Weirdmageddon for years now. In fact, it was originally going to be the season finale for my first season back in 2018. I just never made it because I didn't really have the words. I didn't have the words for it. I didn't feel I'd do it justice. That is until now. I will always enjoy watching this finale, and I am so glad that I finally got to talk about it. And I hope this review gave it the justice that it deserves. With that said, thank you for sticking around. I promise the next review won't take as long, so please, until next time, I hope you guys have a great day.